Hey guys, before we get into today's video, I had a quick announcement that I'm pretty pumped about, and that is Sunday, July 6th, I'm hosting a 1-2 meetup game on Clubs Poker, which I'm really excited about. I haven't done a meetup game in forever, and it's going to be online, which means you can play from your phone or your computer or whatever. If you haven't heard of Clubs, it's one of the newer and I think better options to play online poker here in the US, completely legal. It's got like 400,000 members already or something like that. And it's where I've been enjoying playing online. So this is where I'm gonna host it. I'm also gonna live stream it on my YouTube channel, which means if you join and you play with me, you'll have the chance to either embarrass me for some money or maybe donate some of yours to me. Both are completely fine, I think. But yeah, this is the time and place. Hit this QR code to join or the link down below. They're the same thing. That's all I got. I hope to meet some of you there. For now, let's get back to the vlog. All right, guys, we are back in Las Vegas during the WSOP, but once again, I'm here just to play some cash games. No tournaments, at least not yet. I'm at Aria getting ready to play 100-100 with a 100 big blind ante. It's a fun, kind of casual lineup, at least most times, because I've played this particular game before, and I'm looking forward to a good time if my hair starts cooperating. That's enough yapping. Let's get into some poker, and as per usual, I'll check in with you guys right after. All right, y'all, here we go at Aria playing 100-100 with another 100 from the big blind. It's an ante, so that means there's 300 dead every single hand. Let's get into it. In the first one, there's an early position open to 300 bucks. Middle position makes it $1,000, and then I look down at ace king on the button. Wasting no time getting into the action today. There's a raise, a re-raise, and we have ace king. I think a standard play here is just to raise again, so that's what I decide to do. I make it $2,400 to go, but the raising is not over, as the small blind now thinks for a bit and jams. That's right, a cold 5-bet all-in for $20,000. Everyone else slowly folds, and then it gets back around to me. I haven't even fully settled into the game yet, and we're already facing an all-in for $20,000. Sure, I have ace king, but I don't know how much I love ace king off facing all this action. I think at best we're chopping. More likely we're up against just aces or kings. If he's playing queens this way, so be it, but I just don't see that happening too often. So after a bit of thought, I decide to make a little bit of a snug fold. But I feel good about it until he is kind enough to show me his cards and I turn up ace queen of clubs, which I don't really know if that was a bluff on his behalf, at least an intended bluff, but it definitely worked because I folded ace king and now I feel like an idiot less than 2 minutes after sitting down. Very nice. Let's move on to the next hand where I open 7-5 offsuit for no good reason. I make it $300 to go. The button makes the call and we go heads up to a flop, which is awesome. 9-8-6. Giving us a straight pretty much right away. There's 2 clubs out there though, so I decide to size up here. I bet $1,100 and my opponent makes the call. Turn card is the 10 of diamonds, and this is kind of the tricky thing with playing out of position is even when you have super strong hands, it can be a bit complicated getting the most amount of chips into the middle. I decide to check it, mainly thinking to myself that this card should be better for him. Maybe he'll bluff at it. Maybe he actually has 2 pair or something and I can check raise, who knows. But my opponent doesn't waste much time before checking back, so we're going to a river, which is the 3 of diamonds. Shouldn't change anything, and now it's time to do my own bidding. I don't want to risk this going check check again, so I put in $2,300. Now my opponent thinks for a little bit and folds. Alright, well, we'll take it. In the next one, there's a $200 straddle on, and I open it up to $600 with 7-5 of spades. The player on my left makes the call, and the straddle defends. So 3 of us are going to a flop, which comes down ace, jack, 6, 2 hearts, 1 diamond. I completely miss. And because there's not even a single spade out there, despite it being an ace high board, I kind of just shut down. Straddle checks, I check, player behind me checks too. So 3 of us still going to a turn, which brings some hope. It's the 8 of hearts, gives me an open-ended straight draw. Obviously, it brings in the flush, but after the way this one's played so far, I don't think anyone actually has a flush. So when the straddle checks, I decide to bet $600. Worth noting, I would also do this with top pair sometimes. Maybe a hand like pocket eights that turns a set. There's definitely some value in there, so I feel good about this mildly unorthodox bluff. 600 into the pot. Player on my left makes the call, and then the straddler overcalls. I did not really expect this based on, just the fact that neither of these guys seem too interested up until now, but it doesn't really matter because the river bails us out. It's the 9 of diamonds, giving me a very hidden straight. Straddle checks again, and now it's just a question of how much do we want to bet for value. And even though going big, I think makes sense because we have a big hand, I don't know if that's going to get us paid. I really don't think either of these guys have too much. So instead, I decide to bet small. Maybe we'll induce a bluff. Maybe we'll get called really light by like second or third pair. So I throw in $800. Player on my left thinks for a little bit, but folds. Now it gets back to the straddler who does not call, but doesn't fold either. Instead, he puts in a check raise. And I'm pretty sure we've induced some sort of bluff and he's trying to steal it. So I waste little to no time in making the call, at which point we get shown the bad news. He's got 10-7 offsuit. He did have a heart on the turn, as well as a straight draw, which is, now a bigger straight than the one I have. So kind of a cooler, but I guess that's what happens when you play 7-5. Sometimes you're going to get punished. 12,500 in the pot and it's going the other way. But we have the perfect remedy in this next one as we look down at pocket kings. That's right. Even all you guys out there in the comment section and the chat can't be mad about this one. Pocket kings is a real hand. And well, I could go into some deep analysis here, but long story short, there was a raise, I re-raised, he raised, I raised, a bunch of raising. We end up getting it all in for not that much each. I think it was under 10,000 a piece. And we get the bad news. My guys got pocket aces. So a little bit of run bad here to start off the day. We go to a run out, which doesn't bring any help. And it's just going to be tough to win when you have kings versus aces. This isn't going to be one of those times, so we do lose, but the silver lining is, the pot wasn't too massive. Moving right along to this next hand where I raise it up to $500 on the button with king jack, and then my opponent in the big blind bumps it up to $2,200. Back around to me, and I think you could entertain a few different options actually, but I decided to just call in position and see what happens, mainly because I've played against this guy before and I kind of like my post-flop edge, to be completely blunt with you guys. So I make the call and I kind of look like a genius, speaking of post-flop edge, as we flop the nuts on queen 10-9. 2 hearts, 1 diamond. Yeah, it takes an absolute genius, right, to claim you have some sort of post-flop ability and then just flop the best hand. I get it. My opponent checks, and now I bet small, $1,600. He makes the call, and we're going to a turn card, which is about as good as it comes. The 6 of diamonds, bringing in another flush draw, but not really completing any draws aside from 8-7, which I don't think is super likely, but not impossible. Anyway, my opponent checks again, and now it's time to size up. And my thinking is, if I had any bluffs now, I would want to apply maximum pressure. So doing that with strong hands also makes sense. We also have 0 removal to hands like 2 pair and sets and whatnot, so I make it $10,000 to go. You guys see those 2 chips? Those are called flags for obvious reasons. My opponent, though, makes the call pretty quick despite this big bet that I've put in. So we're going to a river, which obviously I'm hoping is clean, but it's not really that. It's the 3 of hearts bringing in the obvious flush draw on the flop. And it's not like I'm necessarily worried that he's going to have a flush based on how this one's played out, but I think if he does have an overpair or something like ace queen, it's just going to make it that much more difficult to get the rest of the chips. but we still have to try, which is exactly what I'm going to do when he checks for a third time. He's got around 30k behind, and I decide to go for all of it. My opponent folds pretty quickly and later claims that he had pocket kings, so not really the best river card since it kind of makes it easier for him to get away. Interesting to see what he would have done if it was like another 6 or just a low black card, but alas, can't complain after sucking out with king jack versus pocket kings. Now at this point we get moved tables, which I know to some of you guys sounds really weird, and actually it is really weird, but what happens is the floor will come in and tell you to pick up your chips and move to a different table. That's because we're playing on table 1, which is the main poker table here at the Aria poker room. Some other bigger game was about to start, so they kick us off to a smaller table. That's why the felt is going to change colors, but here we go. I've got ace-9 offsuit in this hand. There's a raise to 300. I bump it up to 1,000 in position, obviously just bluffing and trying to get heads up, versus what I think is an action player. And the action player shows me exactly what that means, because when it gets back around to him, he shoves for $4,800. Obviously not loving my spot now with ace-9 offsuit, but as mentioned, this is a player who I think is just here for a good time, and I am definitely not one to shy away from that against this kind of dude. So I make the call, trying to give him some action. Who knows, maybe we're in good shape if he's got like king queen or some small pocket pair, and it turns out that's kind of exactly right. He's got pocket 7s, so it's an honest flip. Ace-9 versus 7s. We run it twice and find no help on either board. All right, there are worse things than doubling up a guy who's giving plenty of action. Let's move right on to this next one where I've got 7-deuce offsuit. You might be thinking, why is this hand in the vlog? Well, we are playing the 7-deuce game at this table, which means if you're able to win a hand with 7-deuce and show it, everybody owes you $300. So there's a little extra incentive if we can take it down, plus the obvious bragging rights. Let's see if we can pull it off. In this one, the straddle is on for 200. There's a raise to 500 from early position. Already a little dicey, but let's see if we can manage. I make it 1,700 to go in later position. We do have last action, which is nice. Gets back around to the initial raiser, and I'm obviously just hoping he folds or calls. And he does. He makes the call, so we are going to go to a flop heads up with over 3k already in the middle, and it comes 10, 10, 10. Overall, a very good board. I'm usually the one who's going to have aces, kings, and queens, whereas my opponent won't have those hands as often. Even if he does have a small pocket pair, I think multiple bets might get the job done. So he checks, and I start with a small wager of $1,200. Worth noting, I would do this with all my hands, both good and bad, and it seems perhaps my opponent knows that because he sticks around. So we're building a pot here, going to a turn, which is pretty damn good. It's a king. This is another card that's going to help me even more if I were bluffing with, you know, king, queen. I could have ace, king, all sorts of hands that connect now with this king, which would essentially be the nuts. My opponent checks, and I see no reason to not continue betting. So I throw out another flag, this time not for value. A single chip worth 5,000 US dollars. Is it enough to get the job done? I'm not sure, because my opponent goes into the tank for quite a while here and eventually makes a very frustrated fold, slowly and reluctantly tossing his cards to the muck. Well, he's not going to like this. I turn over the 7-deuce and we get it done. Everyone has to pay up, and of course some people laugh at this hand, which is kind of the whole point of the game. Next, there's a raise to 300 from that player I lost a flip against, and I look down at ace-jack offsuit from the blinds. Good enough to raise, I think. It's going to be the best hand more often than not, so I make it $1,400 to go. It gets back around to him, and he makes the call. So we're going out of position to a flop heads up, which is pretty damn nice. It's jack 8-7. Top pair, top kicker on a draw heavy board. I'm not too worried about him having sets, so really I see no reason to slow down. I throw in $1,000. And my opponent makes the call, so we're sticking around for a turn card, obviously looking for a brick, and it's the exact opposite. It comes at 10, now losing to different 2-pair combinations, as well as any 9, obviously, now makes a straight. So I decide to check it just because this card kind of sucks. But my opponent checks it back, so it seems perhaps we still have the best hand. Off to a river, which is another 7. Shouldn't change too much, unless, of course, he called the flop with a 7. But I think it's a cool spot to think about an all-in. I should say, by the way, he's only got like $4,000 left, which is around the pot size. And the reason I say this is it's gonna look like I'm either representing a monster or a complete bluff, and we might get called by a hand like ace 10, he might have king 10, he could have queen jack, you know, all these single pair holdings that we beat. And it might look a little bluffy to him, so maybe we'll keep him curious and get the max. I know it's risky because we could obviously get called by a better hand, but I think I'm okay with the risk. So I shove all in, looking for a call, but not a snap call. And we do get a snap call, so that doesn't look like good news, and sure enough, it's not. My opponent has ace 9, which is a turn straight, and he checked it back. The sneaky fashion in which he played his hand gets him paid the absolute maximum. Nice hand to him, and now I kind of feel like a fool. Now, if you thought that hand was comedy, here's another treat for you. In this one, there's a couple of limps. The $200 straddle is on. I raise it up to 1,000 on the button with king, queen offsuit. It's a pretty strong hand, so why not? And then the big blind decides that's not quite enough as he makes it 3,300 to go. The limpers fold and it gets back around to me. Against such a small size, in position, and you know, being in a private game and all, I'm going to make the call and go to a flop. Let's see what happens. It comes down 9-7 deuce with 2 clubs. I think this board is generally going to be a little bit better for me, but my opponent perhaps disagrees because he bets small, 2,200. I didn't really expect this. I thought he would either bet bigger or check. This gives me the chance to float for a pretty cheap price. We can set up bluffs later on. I also have the queen of clubs, you know, kind of like one of those in case of emergency break glass type of things. So I decide to make the call and see what develops on the turn, which comes to 6 of clubs, bringing in straight draws, flushes, potential 2-pair combinations, even pocket 6s are available. So I think this is a really good card for me, and maybe my opponent also fears that because he now checks. I think that's the perfect chance to now go try to steal this pot. So I assemble a bet of 4,600, really just thinking to myself, if I had a flush or a set or whatever, how much would I bet? And I think this is a good amount, so I toss it in there. And now my opponent thinks for a bit and makes the call. That is not what we wanted. I was hoping he had ace high and we would get away with it here, but not to be, at least not yet. Off to a river, which is a really interesting card actually. It's the king of spades. So I end up not really having a bluff anymore. Top pair on this kind of board is still really strong. I mean, yeah, we could be up against like ace king with the ace of clubs, or maybe a hand like pocket kings, but those are both very unlikely. So really, I think I've got the nuts here. Perhaps we've sucked out against pocket jacks or pocket tens, hands like that. And now we can potentially go for some actual value. My opponent checks, and part of me is thinking that just checking back is probably fine. But I think going for a value bet here is a cool and creative, you know, thin spot that a lot of other people wouldn't go for. Now, do I think checking back here is a mistake? No, not by any means. But I go for the fancy value bet here. Like I said, trying to get some value from a weaker pair than a king. It's really just that simple. But my opponent wastes no time in calling after I bet 8,000, and that exactly is the problem with going for thin value in spots like these. Sometimes you just wreck yourself, and this time we get wrecked by, guess what? 7-deuce offsuit. That's right, my man flopped 2-pair after 3-betting pre-flop. There is really no justice, but you got to give him credit. He went for it pre-flop with $3,300 and gets rewarded. Not only does he win this pot, but of course I now have to pay him a little bounty on top of that. This game is so annoying sometimes. But at least there is one more hand for today's vlog, which might be the saving grace. In this one, I've got 9-8 of clubs, and we are once again battling against the same opponent who just kicked my butt with 7-deuce. Let's see if we could get it done this time. There's a $200 straddle, 1 limper, and I decide to raise it up to 1,000 with 9-8 of clubs. Could over limp too. I think that's a viable option, but I decide to raise it up. The button makes the call, and the limper also makes the call. Keep in mind, the button is the player who we just lost to. He is the main nemesis in this hand as well. The board comes down ace 5 deuce with 2 clubs. It's pretty damn good. We've got a flush draw, and it's an ace high flop. Limper checks. I continue betting for $2,200. The button makes the call and the limper folds. One thing I'm paying attention to is the button called with the limper left to act behind him. That's generally, I think, going to be stronger than if he had just called closing the action, because of course he's opening himself up to get check raised. Anyway, the limper folds and just the two of us go to a turn card, which is the queen of spades. What do we want to do here with 9 high out of position and just a naked flush draw? And even though, the obvious answer is probably just keep bluffing because we have no showdown value, I just don't really like it. I have a feeling he's got at least an ace, maybe even a bigger flush draw, and none of those hands are going to fold, especially after I just lost a big pot to him. So I decide to check and see if maybe we can realize some sort of equity on the river. He checks it back, which is nice, and we make a pair. It's the 9 of diamonds. I decide to check again. Maybe we can get to showdown and win versus, who knows, 5-6 suited or something, but it's not meant to be, as my opponent now assembles a bet of 3,500. It's not a very big bet. We might have to call here. We're getting a pretty good price, and we do beat some bluffs. Like maybe he's got missed clubs himself. Maybe he's got a hand like, I don't know, 6-7 of diamonds that floats on the flop. Who knows? The thing is, not only would he have to have those hands, but he also would have needed to check them back on the turn. And I think that's a key factor here. If he was floating with some garbage on the flop, I think once we're heads up on the turn, he would almost always start bluffing after I check it. He didn't do that, which makes me think he's got some sort of showdown value, and now he's just trying to get some more of my chips with top pair or something. So I make a reluctant fold, and he is kind enough to show me that he actually had ace 10 of clubs. So not only did he have top pair, but another club would have been an absolute disaster, as we would have gotten out flushed. So I guess in a sense, it's good that we didn't get there. Anyway, that was the last interesting hand of the session, if you could call it that. I don't know if it was interesting to lose almost every pot at this new table, but that's how my night went. As always, I hope you all enjoyed, and stay tuned for some final thoughts. Just got done playing, and I had fun. I guess that's the best thing you could say results-wise today. Financially, though, it didn't really work out for me. I guess, it could have been worse. Got kings versus aces, and I ran good that the guy was short-stacked. And a couple other pots I lost where I think it could have gone a little more violently. So all in all, I'm not too disappointed. And of course, I hope to meet at least some of you on Sunday. This meetup game is going to be a lot of fun, and I'll probably be splashing around more than I should. So that's all I got today. Thank you guys for watching. Thanks for the support. I'll see you all next time. Peace.